This video is both the rollout and the tutorial for our tier bump system. You'll find the information for this here on the spreadsheet on the Tiers tab. Now, our motivations behind this. So every year we have some compliance issues. We penalize the owners that break the rules. And sometimes we get the same owners kind of doing the same things. So if the stick, the penalties, isn't working, perhaps offering a carrot, something good, an incentive will. So that's the first train of thought. Next we've got, so our league started 2010 season. We've got owners that have been with us since 2010 that have never been penalized. They've never had a compliance issue. So this also kind of serves as a thank you. Thank you for being with us this long. Thank you for following our rules. And then we got a couple other things going on. If we come down here to Tier 5, you'll see Scott Philadelphia is in Tier 5 for having 3 losing seasons. The tier system is meant to encourage winning. Scott's a pretty good owner, and he has a pretty bad team. So this system's going to give him a chance to get out of the Tier 5 restrictions. Now, if you're in Tier 5 because of penalties, you can't use a tier bump to get out of it. But that's not why Scott's there, so he'll have the opportunity to pull himself out. And then finally, the tiering system, in a general concept, is if all other things are equal, a free agent's going to choose to go to the better team. So in real life, for example, if a free agent was offered the same contract by both the Baltimore Orioles and the New York Yankees, odds are quite likely he's going to sign with the Yankees. But every once in a while you get a guy that maybe it's closer to his home, or maybe he likes the ownership. I mean, Billy Beane can get guys to sign for him. He's never won a World Series. So that's kind of reflected in this as well with these tier bumps. It gives teams a chance to beat a better team on a free agent if they so choose. We'll explain all this in a minute. So we're here in the tier tab, and first thing you want to know is column A. These are the tiers. This is where you're assigned. I update this each off season. To figure out which tier you go into, I use all the information that you see from K over. That all feeds into what tier you belong in. And if you're curious, and you're familiar with our bidding system, you know what our tiebreakers are. Well, here they are on this sheet. First is the tiers. Second is the World Series wins, the banners. And then third will be the 3-year running total of your wins. So that's where the tiebreakers are at. And then for your information here, E, this is how many of these tier bumps you've earned. And then F through J, this is your streak. And that kind of feeds into earning these things. So how does this work? So we're going to use Zach here. You'll see that Zach has 1 tier bump in his bank. And then you'll see in the streak boxes 15, 16, 17, 18. Those are years. So from 2015 to 2018, Zach's got a 4-year compliance streak going on. If he completes 2019, this year, it'll be 5 years. Now the way this works is if you make it to column 3, which you'll notice is a different color, you'll have the opportunity to turn your streak in for 1 tier bump. If you make it to the column 5, your streak will automatically be turned in for 2 tier bumps. And one other thing you should know with this is so Zach here happens to be in year 4. If he chooses voluntarily to turn it in for that 1 tier bump, or if he's penalized, either way, he still gets his tier bump that he earned in 2017. If he voluntarily turns it in, what's going to happen is I'm going to delete all these. I'm going to give him that 2nd tier bump because he already has 1 and 1 is 2. And then I'm going to put 18 in column 1 here because he's still compliant, the streak's still going. So he started a new streak and he's 1 year in. Whereas if he's penalized, these will all be blank because he's no longer in the midst of a compliance streak. So that's how you You earn them as you follow the rules for so many years, and you get some tier bumps. One other way to earn them is if you are a new owner and you complete your first full season with our league without penalty, you'll get one, and it won't count against the streak. It's just so you can kind of get caught up with everybody else. So you'll see that we have the rollout. We have some guys already have quite a few in here. That's because we've been in this league for a decade, and these guys have earned these over those 10 years. Going forward, I don't expect to see this many stored up, although it's possible because there's no expiration date on your tier bumps. I don't think it's likely. Guys are more likely to use them than save them. And we're all going to earn them at the same rate going forward, so this really should balance itself out. We just might have a little bit of a hiccup here this first year. So, again, if you get to the yellow column, you can choose to turn them in and give yourself one tier bump. And you can make that decision at any point during, once you've earned the third one, you can do it any point at 4. But once you get to 5, it's automatically turned in for you. You get 2. You'll see, for example, Brian here, 16, 17, 18. He's made it to year 3. If he says, hey, Jake, I want to use it, he'll end up having to post it in his decision thread. But if he makes that decision, I'll delete all of these and give him that second bump. One other point, because this is a rollout, you'll notice one of our owners has a 1-game penalty in 2 of the 3 years. We're still going to allow him to continue a streak. They were little minor things, and no one knew this was coming. But typically, during your 3-year window, so that's over here, year 1, 2, 3, you could have 1 game in penalty in that whole window, or 1 mil in fines in that whole window, and keep your streak going. Otherwise, you're looking for these numbers to fall off and kind of just drop off, get out of the way here. We credit whole season, so if you join during a trade deadline in 1 year, you're going to have to make it from that trade deadline to the conclusion of the following season, your whole season, to get your new owner bump. And over here in tenure, that whole season is where we start your tenure. You'll also see that we have a couple of owners. We got Troy and Adam, who used to be with us, stepped away for a little while and came back. We got a couple other owners that have switched teams during their tenure. It's all factored in here. So, that's how you earn them. Compliance over time. Well, how do you use them? We got 4 ways you can use these things. And the first, which is why we named them tier bumps, couldn't think of anything better. The first way you use it is to improve your global tier. By global, I mean your tier in regards to all auctions. That's column A. You would post in your decisions thread. Every January we have a decisions thread. Options, contract extensions, free agents you're losing, discounts, it all goes into that thread. So will these. And you can choose to improve your global tier. So myself here, I'm tier 3. I could use one of my tier bumps and make myself tier 2. If I do that, I'll come in and I'll remove one of them, so 3 will drop to 2. And then I'll actually move my column to the appropriate spot in tier 2 based on tiebreakers. So Anthony and Greg have won banners, I have not, so I'll be under them. But because I have more wins than the other 2 guys, I would slot in right now 3rd in tier 2 if I did that. So global tier improvement is one way. You can use as many as you want up to tier 1. You can get yourself all the way up to tier 1 if you want. So for me, that would cost 2 of my tier bumps. It's got pretty good value because that affects every auction you have, primarily in the February off-season free agency, but those tiers do roll over into the season, although they don't usually come into play because we don't usually have auctions high enough to matter during the season. The second way is as a tiebreaker in a single auction. Then this is where the worst team could beat the better team on a free agent, where the Orioles could go sign someone that you would have thought would have went to the Yankees on the same deal. Might not look like it's going to work that way with so many of these already in the bank, during rollout, but over time when these get used up and we're earning on the same rate, if you're planning, if you know that 3 years from now player X is going to hit free agency and you want him, so you hang on to your tier bumps to make yourself more likely to get that person. And the way that works is in the auction itself, you would say how many of these bumps you're expending. And you can go past tier 1 on this. This is a tiebreaker that you're using it for. So for example, myself and Zach will be bidding on whatever this player is, and I want the guy. First thing I got to use is enough tier bumps to at least get in the same tier as Zach. So for me that would cost 2 bumps to get into tier 1. But I already know that Zach beats me in the tier 1 tiebreakers, because again, he won a World Series, I did not. So I would have to use all 3 of my tier bumps to beat Zach in a single auction. Now, in turn, he could go ahead and say, well, I'm going to use mine, because he's got 1 there. Now he just beat me. When that happens, the winner expends his tier bumps that he said he would use. So in this case, Zach uses 1 to win the auction. I come in here and delete it. It's gone. But the loser gets to keep his. You only give them up if you win the auction. That may not be the best value for your tier bumps. Again, global tier bump improvement lets you bid better on all the auctions out there. But if there's someone you really like for example this year Bryce Harper's a free agent, that may be the avenue you want to go. So we have 2 more ways you could use it. They don't actually involve tiers at all, they involve cap. You could choose to trade them in for hard cap. By that I mean this number up here, salary cap. You get 1 mil for each tier bump you turn in, and that's permanent. So if James here used his tier bump for 1 mil, he would now be 111.11, and that money's permanent. It counts forever. That's pretty good value. If you're here for 10 years, you just got 10 mil off it, so on and so forth. You'll notice we have some restrictions on that. These numbers up here. This first number, 114.95, which may be different at the time you're viewing this video. It's based off a formula up here. You have to be at or below this number to turn in tier bumps for hard cap. And if you do turn in tier bumps for hard cap, you cannot go above this number. This is the cap number of the team with the most cap. This happens to be Kansas City Greg at the time of this video. So what we're looking at here, the first number, that's the 80th percentile of everybody's cap. The reason we kind of cut it off there is we don't want the teams with the most cap that just run away with cap. We do want to try and keep teams within a certain window so that the teams with the low cap numbers aren't at a massive competitive disadvantage. And then the second number, that's the cap number of the team with the most cap. We kind of want that to be earned by winning. Greg has that number because he's had a highly successful franchise, and that's kind of how we want that to be earned. Now with that said, because this is a rollout video, the teams that already have them, we don't know how you would have used them over the 10 years you'd earned them. So you're going to have the opportunity to post in your decision thread for this January 2019, that you want to use them as hard cap regardless of what these numbers are. So Greg himself could come in here and use all of his tier bumps to improve his cap if he'd like, and any team that is above this number can go ahead and use them however they want, because we don't know how you would have used them during the past 10 years. But once we get past decision day 2019, these will be enforced. And then the final way is payments. You can use a tier bump as a single season payment of 4 mil or less. It has to go on a player. You got to name the player. The player must have the ability to absorb that money, so his contract has to be at least 4 million. And if he has payments on him already, there's got to be 4 mil left in room to attach that. If there's not, you can still use the bump as a payment, but you're not getting the difference and we don't split it. So if the most room you have to work with is 3.5 mil, you can turn it in for a 3.5 mil payment. This too must be posted in the decision threads. We want to know how much cap the league is working with before free agency starts. We're not going to have you coming in and just randomly, oh, I want my 4 mil now. Also, it saves some work on the LMs. We're only going to have to update this so many times a year, instead of having to just randomly go in there whenever somebody wants to use it. One other thing we're going to do is, with this rollout, we're restricting up. You can use up to 2 tier bumps for payments. We got guys with 3 and 4 tier bumps. We don't want to just dump 12, 16 million a team into the cap pool for this off season, and then have 10, 15 teams that are just left in the dust. So you're going to get to be able to use 2 of them for payments, and we're just going to keep that going forward for now. We'll see how it plays out, but for now you can use 2 of your tier bumps for payments. One other thing with this is, if you ever go over cap during the season, because that's when we enforce cap, and you have tier bumps, in addition to the normal going over cap penalties, we are going to take tier bumps from you and turn them into payments to get you over cap. If it takes more than one, it takes more than one. You will lose them because we got to get you clear of the cap. So that's the gist of it. If you're compliant for 3 years, you get 1. If you make it to 5 years, you get 2. You could turn it in at any point once you've earned the first one. You won't lose credit for years earned if you turn them in voluntarily. New owners get 1 after their first year, if they're compliant. If you start early, if you start on a trade deadline or whatever the previous season, you must be compliant all the way through to the end of that season. You got 4 ways to use them. You can improve your global tier. You could use them as a tiebreaker in an auction. You could turn them in for permanent cap if you meet these restrictions, and you can turn them into payments. So again, thank you to the guys that have been compliant and have been with us for a long time. And just a couple quick tips. Planning. We mentioned planning. If you got a specific player, save for that player. If you're in a situation like Scott, now Scott might look at his roster and say, I'm probably not going to have a winning season next year too. So maybe he uses 1 tier bump this year to get out of tier 5, and maybe he saves 1 for next year if he thinks, I'm not going to get out of it next year either, so that he's not held to these restrictions. Cap. We got these cap limits. You really want to use yours for hard cap, but you don't quite qualify yet, so maybe you save it until you can get in under the window. So just kind of plan ahead. Alright. If you have any questions, come see us on the board.